And I'm going to start by framing the conversation with just some background and what is really my opinion about where we as a college need to be going and thinking about AI. And we'll each speak for a little bit, and then we're just going to enter into a discussion because we know that everybody's coming at this with different experiences, different levels of expertise, and some anxiety. So this is an opportunity for us to sort of air that and talk through some things. Let me just turn the slideshow into a full screen. Okay. And we're all seeing the slideshow, right? Yeah, great. Okay. So our AI future, and yes, I did create that graphic on the right using AI. Just put in, Latinx students working at computers, and boom, got that nice and quick. Okay, just wanted to experiment with the tech. So here's my thesis, right? And this is my opinion, and I look forward to your vigorous debate and thoughts in response to that, right? I believe that what colleges do is train people to think critically and creatively for the betterment of the human experience. I think what AI does is it shapes how and what humans think and how they do their work. Therefore, I posit colleges are just going to have to learn to use AI and teach students how to learn to use AI critically and creatively for the betterment of the human experience. In other words, we're going to work with it, not against it. It is a tool, and it is a tool that
is like the #2 person at the college.
Hi, Arthur.
Allison Peets, she's the provost.
Okay, hold on. You're not on mute. Arthur, you're not on mute. Yeah, okay. So first of all, when people talk about artificial intelligence and using it, they typically talk about one interface, which is the ChatGPT. There are many, many different interfaces out there. And one of the ways for any of us to get comfortable with it, and I know half the people on this call already are comfortable with it, but for those who aren't, my advice is to open up multiple screens at the same time and try out one sort of prompt for all of these different AI generators and see the differences in responses. So for instance, I tried out what are the central elements I should consider in a university AI acceptable use policy. Got some really interesting answers, great organizing thoughts and background and whatnot. I would simply say that in that particular search, Bard had what I thought was the most eloquently put, succinct, and useful rubric, right? But that's just in that one, that was that question at that one moment. But I think one thing that we all want to be aware of is that you don't want to say that one is going to have the best and always the best answer, right? That you're going to get different kinds of answers from different, right, AI generators. So I encourage everybody to test them out. I encourage you also to ask your students to test them out because they are going to be coming up with different things. So where is higher ed at this moment in terms of AI? Well, everybody's jumping on the bandwagon, right? So just this week, Arizona State University announced that it is partnered with OpenAI, that's the creator of ChatGPT, and that all of their staff and students are going to get access to the paid version for free. They're testing certain things for and with OpenAI. They're really considering themselves something like a think tank for it. University of Michigan last semester had already created services using the same platform, but they've tailored it. And actually, one of the really interesting things that they are doing at Michigan is they've created a way for every online course to create a 24/7 chatbot tutor. So if you've got materials, you load all of those into the chatbot, and then your students can simply ask questions about what you're teaching, and they're getting some tutoring and some help back. Fascinating, and I'm sure that all of us will have something like that within a year. So what is CUNY doing? So New York State is investing, you might have heard Governor Hochul talk about this, something like $400 million in becoming an AI hub. And all of the universities in New York State are scrambling for this. CUNY has been given $75 million, 25 million of which will be for us to participate in this AI initiative. The other 50 million of which is to hire a director and 25 faculty members. So there will be some sort of centralized initiative from CUNY on this, although they'll probably be asking the campuses, as they often do, with about 3 minutes to answer, and then I'll come with some sort of call to all of you saying, who's in on AI? And you'll go, and that'll be that story. So in other words, CUNY is not off the grid on this. We're trying to get on the grid. And our executive vice chancellor is making the case that because we serve a population that has the capacity to be underrepresented in the biases or captured by the biases of AI, we have a particular moral stake in being at the table for discussions in the generation of AI. Okay, so now I'm going to go out on a limb and share some things that I got mostly from Antonio Jose Bowen, who has a book coming out in April on how to teach with AI. And he was presenting at a conference I was at last week. And he generated most of these questions or these suggestions, right? So how can AI improve your teaching? One, you can put in your instructions to your course or your syllabus into your course into ChatGPT and ask for improvements, right? Improvements in a certain direction. I want my syllabus to be more inclusive. What suggestions do you have for me? Or this is my writing prompt. Is it clear to students? Can you clarify it for me? Or can you change the language to be more student friendly? You can give it a rubric, and you can actually ask it to generate feedback on papers. It can do that for you. I know that's going to be the most controversial one. I look forward to that discussion. And as I just shared with you, right, pretty soon you can make a tutor for your course using it. The list is endless. Also, you could just sort of generate in-class learning activities, right? You know how you're trying to think of what's the most creative way to help my students understand this material. You yourself do that work mentally. Well, you don't always have to. You can ask AI, it will scrape the internet for all the information that it has and will probably come up with some really good suggestions. We don't have to invent the wheel every time. One, I think this is my last point. My second to last point, right? Another is that some universities are getting very specific about how we teach. And I would say that some of this makes a lot of sense to me, right? So one of the things I noticed on Michigan's site is that they are teaching prompt literacy. In other words, how are you going to get the best answers from AI? Well, you should be prompt literate. What's the best way to write a prompt so that you can get, the kinds of results that you're looking for? This makes a lot of sense to me. And I encourage you all to go and Google that or use the link that I have there to find that information. So what are we doing at John Jay? And Andrew can talk a little bit about this too. I am about to create an ad hoc committee to create a policy that can guide our ethical, legal, and best use options, right? We need an acceptable use or a responsible use policy at John Jay. And so I am going to ask a few folks from faculty, if you're interested, let me know, to help write it with me and Andrew. Then we will share it with Faculty Senate, UCASC, this Committee on Graduate Studies, and get more feedback, make sure everyone's okay with it. We'll share it with legal counsel. And we should have a policy because that is really, we're at a point now where this has been unleashed. So let's figure out how do we want to use it and use it best. So that's the end of my portion of this talk. So I'm going to pass it over to Hunter.
Hello, I'm Hunter Johnson. I'm in the Math and Computer Science department. I teach the machine learning courses that we offer in conjunction with some of my colleagues. And I'm the co-director of the applied math major, which has a focus in data science. We really should have called it AI, but that word didn't have the currency that it has now. Uh, and so I'm really glad to be having this conversation. In November 2022, when ChatGPT came out, I knew everything had changed. Like for years, there had been this like a kind of crisis in curriculum design and computer science, where the kinds of assignments that I got as an undergraduate, for instance, here's pseudocode for quicksort, you go implement quicksort, that's the way I was educated. That hadn't been working for a long time. And now it's sort of like sort of fully exploded in some sense. Like every student has become both omniscient and ignorant. And so I'm still struggling with what to do. And I'm really happy that we're getting together and trying to form some kind of policy. I've been wanting somebody to advise me on this for a long time. And I'm almost disappointed to be on the panel because there's one less person whose advice I can't take. And I love hearing about what people are doing and very pleased to be here.
Thank you, Hunter. Andrew.
Good morning, everybody. I assume part of my role here is, as interim dean of academic programs, right? So I chair UCAS, which has our academic standards subcommittee. So a lot of what we talk about in terms of developing policy, creating a set of standards for what the appropriate use of AI as a technology will be, will run through there. I think I'm going to go out on a limb and say that you are here, at least in part, if not fully, because of the concerns that you all have with how students are using this to do the work that you're assigning them in class. AI is, it's a new technology. It is a technology which we all know is going to reshape the way that we all engage with work in one way or another. It is also yet the latest in a series of advancements or tools that students can use to make doing their work easier. So from a policy perspective, right, which is partly where I sit, use of AI is in many ways no different from the other methods that students have to plagiarize or to cheat. This is a tool that they can use to create work that they pass off as their own. So from a policy perspective, the academic integrity portion of that at least feels in one way a little easier to deal with, right? The far more difficult question is knowing that this technology exists, knowing how accessible it is, how easy it is to use, and knowing what its potentials are for transforming the ways that we help our students think about the way that they do their work. Is how do we create policies, how do we create procedures, how do we create a set of standards that essentially guide the way that we teach students to use it. And one of the things that I hope to be part of in these conversations is thinking differently about what we do in our classrooms. Right? So it's not just a question of teaching students how to use a tool that we know is going to be important to their professional lives when they leave here. But it's as Allison said, as Hunter said as well, it's about how do we teach students to use these tools appropriately. And when we talk about kind of the development of skills in our courses, in our programs, it's really about how do we design our materials to teach students how to think, right? How do we teach them how to reason? How do we teach them to use a tool like AI really no differently than we teach them to use other tools to better understand the world around them, to better understand their environments? And I hope a lot of what we will be talking about is really how we design what we're asking students to do, both in the classroom and outside of it, that distinguishes what we know AI can do pretty capably from what we need human input to do. So that is, how do we figure out, or what, how can we look at a piece of work, whether it's a piece of writing, a presentation, right, whatever it is, how can we look at that and distinguish what we know can and should be the portion where AI helped in the creation of it, and really what are the parts where human input, right, human thought was really needed. I don't know necessarily, right, what the standards are for doing that or how we do that, but I'm glad that we're talking about it now. And with that, I'll pass it off.
Jennifer.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to flip the tone a little bit on this, only in that rather than focusing on the potentials, I'd like to provide a reality check as to where we are from a very limited perspective. As the academic integrity officer, I'm not part of the classroom. I come in after the quote unquote bad thing has happened. I don't deal with the pedagogy as much as I deal with the application to the standing policy. But in doing that work, I thought it would be helpful if I gave you a little look back to fall 2023 and what that looked like in light of this AI explosion. So a few real simple descriptive stats. To date, as of this writing, I have received 49 academic integrity reports. The standard for a fall semester is about 25. I have 49 on my desk. I'm expecting at least 15 more. That does not include winter courses, and it does not include the cases that are ultimately going to come back to me because the instructor didn't file a report now, the student is appealing the grade, and I'll get looped in at the grade appeal level. I've done this semester over 60 formal and informal faculty consults. That's as much as I usually do in an entire academic year. Bottom line, people are talking to me a lot and they're taking action a lot. And at least 50%, possibly more of those are specifically referencing artificial intelligence as the cause of their concerns. Another interesting trend, of course, is that most of these cases come to my desk in December. And what's happening with most of these cases is that faculty are reporting, I'm actually reporting every single piece that this student has submitted to me because I just didn't know and I wasn't sure, but now I have to grade them and I got to do something. So here it is. That kind of thing. So here are some complicating factors in trying to address these kinds of concerns. Number one, and I'm telling everybody in this room what they already know, is the lack of tools to quickly and accurately assess whether a given student work actually reflects AI-generated text or not. The tools that are out there are not accurate. They have not been sanctioned as of this writing by CUNY, the way, say, the Turnitin plagiarism tool has been. We are also in a culture now where we're living in a culture of prove it. So understandably, instructors are looking for a way to bolster their concerns about AI-generated texts. And our students are saying the instruments are flawed. Prove this work isn't mine. This slows things down a lot. And again, because we're at a place where instructors are waiting to report their concerns, and they're reporting everything that they see, students are coming back to me and saying, how could he possibly know what I write like? And that complicates the matter even more. Of course, the other factor is the obvious one. There's no time for faculty to have the conversations with students that would support what these AI text generation platforms suggest. The ideal thing is you get this report, it promotes a concern, let me talk to you about your work. There is no time. This is what I've been hearing all semester long. There's no time to have these conversations with every student all the time. That's a problem. There's also the delay in updating the CUNY policy. This is coming from above. CUNY waited until 2022 to revise their policy, even to reflect any kind of online concerns. The policy hadn't been updated since 2011. They updated it in 2022. They are trying to update it now. It's hung up with the Board of Trustees, who's kicked it off their agenda 4 times. So that's what we're waiting for. And then we have an outdated protocol here at John Jay for addressing academic integrity concerns. We haven't changed it in the 12 years that I've been here. And that's something that can be addressed in a different way, but there's a bottleneck. And if you're interested in seeing what that bottleneck is, I'm not going to stop the train to show a slide, but you can go to the Academic Integrity website and see it under Academic Integrity Policies. So back to AI. How has the AI explosion changed the perception of academic integrity, or has it? Well, now we're looking at knowledge as collation. So if you curate knowledge, do you own it? What does editing actually mean? It's okay to use AI to edit your stuff. But what does edit actually mean? As I talk to students, I'm finding that they think that it means that somebody takes your paper and writes it for you and makes it better, right? What constitutes artificial intelligence? One of the things I've been dealing with for the past 8 years has been Google Translate. Do you know if you run a Google Translate generated paper through an AI detector, it'll come up as 100% computer generated. And we've never had an internal policy to really talk about whether we like Google Translate for our English as second language students, right? Same thing with Grammarly. How many of you have said, oh, please, please, I can't read another one of your bad papers, go to Grammarly. But if Grammarly changes the structure of the sentence, not just corrects it, but changes it, well, is that kind of like an AI generation concern? So we've got a lot of work to do internally to determine what our community standards are about the originality of student work and what we prize and what we think is important and what we need to shift in light of where we're going. And then there, of course, there's, I promise this is my last bit of my speech, but the last thing is the observable shifts in our students and who they are that was already in place long before this explosion hit us. Yes, it's a byproduct of the pandemic. Yes, it's a byproduct of all kinds of things. But what I'm seeing, what I'm learning from our students when I do this work that has become dramatically clear to me is that knowledge is now collation, not internalization. I'm also finding that no matter what instructors try to do to create scaffolded assignments, students don't really understand the value of doing them. And many of those who end up in front of me have no vocabulary for describing how they do things. So if we're going to let people use AI in their classrooms, right, we're going to want them to be able to tell us, our students, how they used it, what prompts they put in, so that we can understand their contribution to the work. And our students no longer seem to have a vocabulary for doing that. That's something to think about too. There's the bias aspect of it. Our students have come to feel that even being asked to talk about that work is an accusation in and of itself. You think I'm not smart enough to write this. That's a problem. And finally, there's the cost-benefit analysis that students do when they decide what's important in the way they do their work. These are the things that I'm learning from our students through doing this work. And it's become really dramatic through this semester. They make choices, they make decisions. You know, it's more important for me not to lose a point on being late than it is to write this myself. And if there's this efficient, wonderful tool that's going to help me, I'm going to do it. So I don't want to be Debbie Downer on this. Please believe me, I am all about the potentials. But for me, given my on the ground vision of what's been going on, one of the potentials I see for this explosion of artificial intelligence, one of the true potentials I see, is for us to take this as an opportunity to revisit what we mean by academic integrity, what we expect of our students, and what we expect of ourselves, and how we share that. And to me, that comes down to the conversation about community standards. And that's the end of my speech. Thank you for your patience.
Well, that is a wonderful tee up. Thank you, Jennifer. All right, so at this point, we are really just interested in having a conversation. We want to know what you think. Certainly, there's been lots of provocations laid out in front of you. And so let's just go. Bernadette.
So in an effort to be able to demonstrate what their writing level is, I often try and have on the first or second day of class, them write something in class, you know, that also serves to show me their entry level, their knowledge of the subject matter. And in an attempt to use that to say, there's no way you could have written this perfect writing assignment 2 weeks later because you have this incomprehensible mush, you know, that you wrote in class. They'll say, well, you know, I wasn't editing. I wasn't really like, you know, doing an outline first. You can't compare that to like a 2-page writing assignment that I had time to do at home. So I'm completely flummoxed about how we could take an assessment of what their writing level is to use as a basis when we suspect that, given how they write essays on their exams, you know, how they did an in-class project, there's no way they had this perfect writing. It's not theirs substantially, you know. And I don't know if anybody else has any other ideas, because it seems like just doing that 15 or 20-minute in-class writing may be a complete waste of instructional time.
Zabby. Or Zabby's computer. I don't know who I'm talking to. Zabby, you there? Okay.
I'm here in 2 different ways, so you can hear me. And now I just wanted to share 2 things. One is that I am going to tell all my students what I learned from my son yesterday, which was grading graduate student work. He said, when we reviewed all the papers, I didn't bring up that one of them seemed to be AI, only one. He said, because it was already the worst paper and everybody was piling on it so much, I didn't need to bring up that concern. But I thought, that's something my students are all going to hear, that if a paper relies on AI, it does not save it from being the worst paper, right? And yes, Jennifer, I also love what you were saying. And in the confusion of being on phone and computer, I've forgotten the other point I was going to make.
Bettina. Still muted.
It's not letting me. Okay.
There we go.
So I have a lot of relevant, I guess, but random thoughts based on everything that's been said so far this morning. So first, I think that we need to add the terms ethically and honestly to the terms that you, Allison, presented at the beginning in terms of what we're here to do. And not to lose sight of those 2 elements. I'm finding in my experience with students this semester, and I was on sabbatical last year, so this was, a revelation to me in the fall. I'm finding that students really need some kind of consciousness raising on an institutional level about what it is to be ethical and honest in the work that you present, and to create in students what we really can't count on anymore, which is a respect for authorship and what it means to be the author of something, and to have intellectual property. And then more respect for instructor expertise. And this really goes directly to what Bernadette was just saying about the assignments that we offer in the beginning to get a sense of how students write. And that, based on that, and ongoing weekly assignments, let's say, we get a sense of how students think and how they write, how they put their ideas together. And I think we have to argue more for the fact that we actually have expertise in that, because a student can just say, well, sorry, I wrote this, and I've encountered that. When everything as an instructor, based on however many years you've been teaching, tells you that no, the student did not actually write this, did not put this together. So all of that, constitutes where I'm at right now with my thinking about this.
Thank you. Kimberly?
Just going off of what Bernadette was saying, I think with the online courses, you get an easier sense of their writing when they're using like discussion boards. So like they're not going to use AI for the most part when they're doing like their quick weekly discussion boards. But then when it comes to the writing assignments and the more heavily like weighted for their grade assignments and their final exams, that they're going to use AI for that. So you get a clear like difference between the weekly 5-point discussion boards and versus the 25-point writing assignments. So I don't know if maybe like in-person classes could kind of incorporate like weekly like discussion boards or something that you give as an assignment. Then they might not use AI for that, and then when they do have a writing assignment, you might get a better sense, and they can't claim that, well, I was in class, so I didn't have time, when they did have time to write their discussion board for them. But for like one of my assignments last semester, it was very clear that almost all of them used the same AI because there were like 3 very unique words that appeared in almost every single submission, and that most of these students would not have in their vocabulary. And so I had to reach out to all of them and say, like, have a conversation. And it went well with some and did not go well with others. But we ended up working it out. And I allowed them all to resubmit the assignment, but then that's more work on us and having to grade assignments twice.
Thank you. Frank?
I think my comment kind of adds on to Kim's point, and I think it's something worth exploring, but maybe we should understand the limitations of AI writing, because based on my current experiences, it seems that AI writing it's broad, it's vague, and it feels like it works better for summaries or briefs or things that are much more easily accessible. However, that makes me curious to learn if AI is also proficient in writing research proposals or projects or anything with a technical aspect. And if that is a limitation, maybe it's a good idea to encourage our students to write more or to engage in more critical writing in which the AI is unable to calculate and formulate something that's simple for them to submit.
Can I just say something technical and exercise my license as a panelist? Just the way ChatGPT was trained, like it learns the statistics of the writing in its corpus. And then it's additionally trained in the secondary process called reinforcement learning with human feedback, in which it learns to play this dialogue question and answer game. And that's why it's so eager to please you, like a Labrador retriever. And the writing is generic because it's sort of like the McDonald's of AI output. Whereas, you know, you could make a more boutique product that you reward for being indistinguishable from Judith Butler or something like that. So I don't know what's coming now, but I agree that the writing that it produces is sort of this pabulum, sort of, you know, average of all the writing in the training corpus. But that's not an inherent limitation of AI. That's a side effect of having this mass appeal product, I would say.
Thanks, Hunter. Alejandro.
Thank you. Thanks, Hunter. That's super insightful, and it makes perfect sense that it's about how we train the model. I sort of had I guess there's just a lot here, but I was gonna maybe respond to sort of what Zabby was saying. You know, I had a student that I'm pretty certain was using ChatGPT the whole semester last semester, and I talked to Jennifer about it. In the end, I just never accused her of that and never went through a formal reporting, but her paper was in fact the worst paper. And she had references in there that had nothing to do with the topic. And she still fought me about her grade all the way to the end. But I guess I'm a little bit troubled by this. And she was using it even for low stakes assignments. So Kimberly, to your point, like she was using it on discussion boards. So part of what I'm incorporating in my class is in-person quizzes and writing exercises weekly that allow me to see how they write. And I sort of am reserving the right to give them oral exams on stuff if I, you know, like they were using words like socio-political infrastructures. And I'm just like, okay, you clearly did not write that, you know, and it's not because you're not smart enough, right? It's not because of that. Anyway, thank you all for this. This is super helpful.
Could I jump in for just a second here?
Mhm.
So a couple of things. Kimberly, I have to tell you that at least a third of the AI-related concerns that were formally reported to me and or informally consulted, I consulted on, had to do with discussion boards. And that actually it was the repetitive nature that led those students to go to AI to do it. It became like just automatic pilot.
Okay.
Just to put that out there. I also, sorry, I just got distracted by Zabby's chat. I also wanted to say that the trick here is actually not so different, I think, in addressing these issues directly with the student. It's not so different in the way in which you would ideally address any concern you had about their work. It's about the work. It's not about them. It's about the work. And part of what I think would be helpful is if instructors could become a little more comfortable in speaking with students about their work and making it clear that that's what it's about. Once the student goes to the dark side of you're accusing me of, even if that's inherently what's leading you to talk to them, you're accusing me of, you're saying that you think that you know, you've kind of lost, that's the end of the conversation pretty much. But if you can, what I have found is the most successful is if you can position it purely in terms of the product. Talk to me about how you wrote this. What did you do? Where did you go?
Christina.
One of the reactions that I've noticed in the students that AI, and they are actually not using it. They've never opened some of them. Some of them we know that they actually use it and they are cheating, but others are really scared of it and they don't even want to open ChatGPT. They don't want to know anything about it because of the possibility of being accused of using AI. And I think that that is a real danger too, because if they don't learn how to use it, they are going to be put at a disadvantage in the job market. So the trick here is that we are not really sure about how to use it as professors. So how are we going to teach something that we don't even know how to use well? But I think that the real danger moving forward is that we don't do anything.
Thank you. Caroline.
I just want to say something about the promises and something about the pitfalls. And I also am very grateful to everybody for this conversation, which is super important. I think it's really important to think about literacy. And so I appreciate the prompt literacy, and certainly in the English department. And one of the ways that we're trying to reimagine our departmental offerings is to think sort of less about, say, the literary study and more about literacies. And I think that this is something that is going to be super important for us in the English department and in our presence in the gen ed to think about. And I'm really appreciative of the opportunity for continued faculty development. Who does not want or is curious about hugging face? I mean, that's where I'm going right after this, right? So I get it. And also I'm really sympathetic to Jennifer, your point about conversations that do take time, which is a faculty concern about talking with our students. I had a lot of conversations with first-year students this year for whom English is a second language and a really recent second language. And that's how they got through high school, which admittedly had a lot of onlineness because they were coming, you know, during the pandemic. And so it's just existential to them, I think, to be questioning this. A lot of them are incredibly bright. Think of how hard it is to go to school in a second language. So, I mean, I think that they have smart student pride, and yet they have relied on these techniques because, like, oh my gosh, how could they not, right? So I think there's a lot of room for sympathy and conversations about where our students are in this. The two things I would want to sort of add, and the things that I'm concerned about is if Bettina wanted to add that language to the phrase, I would like to add social emotional best use. Because I think legal, ethical, all this kind of stuff is important for a policy, but thinking about its impact on our students' development as people, which is what we agree college should be about, is really important. And I have just a thing to say about that. Allison, you had said something about how it was very student friendly, and then you also acknowledged that AI is designed by sort of incorporates naturally the biases that we have. And so it's really important for schools like ours, you know, committed to DEI and principles like this should be part of this conversation. And that's true, but I'm interested at the moment where it is now, is it our student friendly? Like when we talk about the sort of norm student that we study in terms of how they respond to this, are we really going to be, it's important to have a seat at the table, but maybe it's too late on some level for understanding how some of these tools, who they think the normal kind of college student is. You had said something about Michigan having sort of every online course gets a chatbot tutor, and I will certainly acknowledge that this is probably a really different point depending on your discipline and department here, right? In terms of how that goes in number of students you have and number of advisees you have and things like that. But I am concerned about ways in which this technology, even though it isn't online education, might reinforce a divide that began in the pandemic when so many courses were thrown online, and we have unevenly come out of it and have very unevenly come out of it even across CUNY. In terms of online and in terms of departments. Some departments are back in person and some aren't and whatever. So I know it's a separate conversation, but for the task force, I think it's really important to flag ways in which, like every online course gets a blank, we sort of build in incentives to zig instead of to zag. And lastly, because I am now, you know, the class Luddite, I just want to remind everybody about George Orwell's warning in Politics in the English Language about how if words precede your thought, because you use platitudes or you use slogans or whatever, your words can actually think your thoughts for you. And I'm very worried that a lot of AI happens before thinking. Not that you can't be thoughtful when you Google and prompt and like, whatever, I get that. But like, I do actually think that's an enormous political risk for our society, which is so fragile right now in terms of critical thinking and communication. Anyway, sorry, huge soapbox, but those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Caroline. Julia.
Yeah, I want to just kind of add to something what Carolyn just said. So I think one thought that I always have in my classes is to ask, okay, so why do students feel the need to use AI in the first place? Is it my assignment, right? Is it that they don't understand what they are supposed to do? Is the class content too difficult? Something like that. So I try to also explain to them what does it mean for them if they use AI, that they kind of deprive themselves from the experience that they should have in the class. And also to piggyback what Hunter is saying, also maybe to, I feel generally there's overall a lack of understanding of what the technology actually is and what its capabilities are. Even the developers don't exactly know how these tools and bots come to their responses. So I feel like I try to tell my students, AI is a great tool, but it is not designed to give you the correct response, right? It is designed to give you a response. So I think to emphasize that to students as well, and to kind of put them back on the idea of why you're in school, what are you getting out of it as well. And from the instructor point of view, what I've tried now to do this semester is to incorporate AI in terms of creating assignments, in the sense of creating example assignments. So for example, having like pictures of a computer crime scene or something, so that they can use to kind of train the stuff that we're doing in class. Thank you.
Thanks, Julia. Janice.
Thanks. Where'd Andrew go? I thought he was next. Okay.
Oh, he popped out. You're right.
I did pop out. I figured since we're running low on time, I'd rather the attendees have a chance to speak.
Oh, thank you, Andrew. So kind. Okay, well, I will take that. Just listening to everyone. Well, first, thank you so much to the panelists. This is fantastic and very, very helpful. And I'm not going to repeat everything. I agree with everyone, and I'm not going to repeat what I think about that. But taking all of these reactions and excellent points together, what I'm hearing is what actually reminds me of when we were talking at the college at different points about folding things into the curriculum. So writing across the curriculum and, it's standards of different types. And I know Andrew's working very hard on building the use of numbers into the curriculum, quantitative methods and so forth. I think that we can't do everything we need to do in our regular courses. We can build AI in limited ways, but my courses are so content burdened that I cannot stop and teach them how to use AI if I knew the best uses myself. But I want to emphasize one thing that was said before, and that's Christina's point. I don't get the sense that our students really know what they're doing with AI, with ChatGPT. A lot of my students really don't touch it. They do plagiarize generously, and I do mostly catch them at that and impose my own penalties, so Jennifer doesn't have to deal with all of John Jay's students. But I agree with Christina that I think they're really going to miss out in competing with other graduates from other universities. There are positive uses here, and they really tremble when they go to use AI at all. So for both the positive uses and also avoiding the negative ones, I would suggest an introductory level course, the way we have composition courses and we have language courses and courses in statistical methods. It seems to me this is just where we are at this point in time. And our students are going to need some kind of basic 101 required introductory course in the proper use of AI.
Thanks. Linda.
Yes, so my perspective on all of this is that technology historically can be used for good or bad. And when your opening statement, Allison, you really presented so many wonderful ways that we as educators can use AI. I have a couple of concerns. The first thing is I'm so much in agreement that a elementary class or some kind of offering in AI would be wonderful, or even some webinars that could be offered from time to time that we encourage our students to go to. But the other piece is that there are some students, because I had a couple of students this past semester who were learning AI, who knew so much about it and also about how it is not culturally responsive as of yet. And so I think it would be a wonderful idea if there could be a part of the task force or some kind of committee that would include some of our more technically advanced students that could add to the conversation, because sometimes they know. I don't want to speak for everyone on this panel, but sometimes they know more than some of us, in the ins and outs and everything, from the way they experience AI, and they might very well have some wonderful suggestions moving forward when we look to put together some kind of ethics around AI, that also includes, diversity and inclusion, as well as how students can use it ethically. And I'm very much in agreement with our colleague who said that, our students also need to be urged in terms of character development. What is that? To really take pride in something that they wrote and have that pride in intellectual propriety, or how that feels to do something that they know is coming from an internal place and not an external place. And I think that's a greater conversation that has to do with pop culture and everything else, but it's something that we can embed in our students with our interactions with them.
Thank you, Linda. Okay, so we have 5 minutes left. Actually, I know that Andrew had something he wanted to say. My guess is Jennifer does too. And I'd also love to hear from you, Hunter, in terms of what you've heard, what landed with you, reflections, what triggered you, whatever. So we'll go back in the order that we started with. So we'll do Hunter, Andrew, and then Jennifer.
Yeah, so that was great. I could listen to this all day long. I get the sense, I teach coding, you guys teach writing, and so from a technical point of view, I don't think it's likely that there ever will be an effective tool for distinguishing AI writing from human writing. If there ever were an automated way to do that, it would just be incorporated into the AI training process and it would become indistinguishable again. I think you have an obligation to continue teaching people to write, precisely because writing is thinking. But then you end up in what seems to me to be a really complex dilemma, where you have certain students that are not being honest, whatever ethical training we give them, you know, there's the incentive of getting the credential, and the rational actor is going to use the tool that allows them to do that as efficiently as possible. You you have the sort of a duty to assign a writing assignment, but then the impossible task of assigning a grade. And so I've been dealing with that as well, especially in my online classes. And it does definitely multiply workload when you have to filter out cheating. You know, first we had randomized questions, and then we had plagiarism detection, and now, you know, this might be the apotheosis of just fundamentally undetectable cheating. And so how are we going to deal with that? And how do we continue to function as an institution? I think, just speaking in a hard-nosed way from an economic point of view, we need to protect the value of our credential. And so what can our credential attest to? We have to somehow assess the ability of students. And so I think some soft spots, some places we can focus on that distinguish the person from the AI mask that the person is behind, are very longitudinal assignments, possibly even taking place over years, where you give the person sort of free rein, give them all resources, but give them sort of like a personal moonshot that they can maybe organize themselves around and work toward, and develop their own tools for the purposes of accomplishing, you know, let them design their own Tang. So I think we might need to sort of rethink education more in terms of like very long-term, very ambitious, major projects, and assignments that maybe we don't know the answer to. And that's scary. And some students fail in that situation. You know, it's a different kind of student that will succeed in this kind of very open-ended, use all the resources on earth to accomplish this very hard thing. You know, like in computer science, you might say, create a website that's a hit game that has a social network component. Now, they could do that in a few hours, maybe using ChatGPT, whereas before it would take years. But there's a certain person who's just going to collapse under that kind of pressure. There's another person who's going to thrive, who wants to do precisely that. And you know, it's a brave new world. It's very exciting, and I don't know what to do any more than anyone else. But those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Andrew.
I'm gonna echo a lot of Hunter's sentiments there, and reflecting on what some of you have said, but you know, picking up especially on something Alejandro said about you know, signing the in-class writing, and it made me think about how reactive we can be in the classroom. And to this point, right, we've had tools that we could use to detect things like cheating, right? So we have Turn It In or Safe Assign. And echoing something Hunter said, right, we might now have encountered something that there's nothing we can do. Students will use it, and we're not going to be able to tell from the traditional way that we assign student work whether they're using it or not. So really what I hope we are talking about, what I hope we become is not you know, not developing tools, assignments, you know, activities that are reactive, right? You know, based on trying to, you know, essentially trying to catch the student who's using the tool, but really to think differently about what we do in the classroom to do the kinds of things that both force the student to be an active participant in what we're trying to have them do, but also make them excited about the things that we're asking them for. It's never gonna be every student, right? There's always gonna be, you know, those handful of students that are looking to get it done, you know, quickly. Get it done as easy as possible, and they're gonna, you know, they're gonna use what they have at their disposal. But I think if we think differently about what the nature of education is at this level, I'm hoping that we can come to some kind of point where students are using the tools available and using them the way that we think they should, in ethical ways, in ways that make them better students.
Thanks, Andrew. Jennifer.
I don't think I can add, believe it or not, I don't think I can add anything to what Hunter and Andrew have said, other than I so appreciate that we're having this conversation on so many levels. I think that's the greatest potential that we've got, the fact that we're talking about it and that we're thinking about it, and that will translate into action that will benefit all of us, our community.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, everybody, for being here. It has been a rich discussion. So much more to talk about, and the landscape is rapidly shifting. So I know that we will continue to be in this conversation for some time to come, and I look forward to it. Thank you all. See you all in the moot court in 15 minutes for a plenary featuring the wonderful Dean Andrew Sidman again and Dean Janice Johnson Dias to talk about learning loss. And if I'm not mistaken, more on academic integrity. Did I get that right, Andrew?
I think academic integrity is in there as well, right? So
I was afraid so.
Student confidence, like lack thereof, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. More to come. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.